Kadlick, Taylor, Kyle's here for CLNS Media inside the walls of Gillette Stadium because it's too damn hot outside. So we brought it inside. Looks like a jail cell in here, but that's okay. We're in front of a live studio audience. 3 producers, one of our friends from Pat's Pulpit, Brian Hines, over there. To recap day 7 of Patriots training camp, a reminder we're powered by Game Time, so make sure you head over to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Metallica is actually doing sound checks inside of Gillette Stadium, so this place is basically shaking every 45 seconds. But you can get over to Game Time, and you can get some tickets to the Metallica concert.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Not bad. We're getting better at this thing. We're a little bit more laid back on the podcast instead of the stand-up, so it's fun to just hang out and watch Jackson smirk over there. Ain't that right, Jackson Tolliver? Follow
he said yes, sir.
At Jax Tall on, I don't know if that's his thing. Anyway, we're live from inside Gillette, and we're going to talk about day 7 because Drake Maye, I thought, had his best practice of training camp today. He was showing command of the offense, making some pre-snap adjustments, had a lot of good throws. I thought he was putting the ball where it was supposed to be. That obviously that he had that crossing route to Jalen Polk. He had that outbreaking route to Mitchell Wilcox. Those were, I thought, the 2 highlights.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought he was the best quarterback of the day. And you mentioned, too, earlier on our stand-up that's now posted on Patriots Press Pass that the other 2 quarterbacks not named Jacoby Brissett had good days as well. So if I'll hand it over to you, a little bit more detail into the quarterback room and what you saw today out on the field.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid day all around, I'd say, for the young quarterbacks. Drake Maye, like you mentioned, had a couple of blitz beaters. One, the shallow cross to Jalen Polk, and then later he actually appeared to check before the play into a tight end screen to, I believe it was Jacob Warren.
Yeah.
That got a lot of love from Jacoby Brissett. He was fired up after the play. One of those things where you figure behind the scenes that's something they're probably working on trying to improve. Not the first time we've seen that from Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett. So considering he's had a bad last couple of days, especially with the pads, with maybe the processing and the speed of everything ramping up, it was nice to see Drake Maye capitalize on this opportunity. The Patriots were in shells today, no pads. Yeah. So again, the intensity, I don't want to say the intensity was lower because there was a lot of red zone. There was full field. They did a lot, but in terms of like knocking guys around and really the threat of a live pass rush, live quote unquote, there wasn't as much of that. And Drake Maye did look better. Accuracy was definitely improved. I thought early on when they were throwing in one-on-ones and on air, he was a little bit off, but definitely figured it out. There were a couple throws. Honestly, one I think was just poorly played by KJ Osborne on a fade in the red zone. He had one pass that I wasn't crazy about. But for the most part, he was solid everywhere else. That one that you mentioned, Mitchell Wilcox, that was a beauty. It looked like the defense was in cover 2, and Drake Maye was able to just drop it in the bucket to Wilcox with 2 defenders closing in. And then the other guys, Joe Milton had a beautiful throw. I believe it was a one-handed grab. It was either him or Bailey Zappi. I honestly got them mixed up. Those third quarterback competitions, they kind of like
it's a good one, right?
They overlap a
little bit.
They're
both playing pretty well.
They are. This was the first day I actually thought Bailey Zappi stood out for a positive reason. There was a play where he navigated the pocket, then stepped up and threw a touchdown. And Joe Milton, I thought, had the lead. They've been switching off these third quarterback periods, but Joe Milton really seems like he's the guy who's gotten more reps and kind of had a bit of favor. He continues to find the right man, is generally accurate. He could still take a lot of heat off those short throws. But for the most part, again, I thought it was a solid day from the young quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett, on the other hand, a little streaky with his accuracy. I didn't really love his ball placement. That's kind of the second day I've noticed that from him. But as a veteran, I expect him to shake it off tomorrow when the pads come back on.
Yeah, with Drake Maye and this sort of, again, I thought today was a bounce-back day from him compared to what we saw in the first 2 days with pads on Monday and Tuesday. But I still find that, yes, he has this, laser arm that, we're all trying to know and love, right? That's kind of why he came out of college that way as a quote-unquote gunslinger and someone who can just put the ball where nobody else can. I feel like he's almost trying to place the ball too much. He's not just slinging it like we've seen in college. And I feel like that's why he might be a little erratic or like his accuracy might be a little bit off because instead of just going out there and kind of just playing ball, I don't know. I got the feel that, especially during one-on-ones where those, those ones were a little bit inaccurate, I think he's just trying a little bit too much. He doesn't look, he's just slinging. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but there's definitely something off with his, with his rocket arm that we all think we know.
I think for me, it's really just been the processing. I think he's just sped up, and then when your mind's working fast, it kind of has a chain reaction where your feet probably aren't going to be where they're supposed to be because you are a tick behind, and then other things start to kind of feel rushed, and they have to compensate. Right. So I don't know if I think he's placing the ball, but there's definitely been inconsistency in his process physically and mentally. So I'd say that today was one of the first times in a while that didn't seem to be an issue. I thought his footwork looked more calm. Thought he was getting through his reads and diagnosing the defense faster. So yeah, maybe we all know there's been some inconsistency,
Right.
but this was a nice day to see that
today,
he was putting it back on
I
track.
agree. I feel like he's starting to put it all together slowly but surely. I'm definitely not gonna lose the starting job to Joe Milton. I don't know if you saw our friend Colin Cowherd say that today on Fox Sports 1.
It's not a thing.
Not a thing.
They play completely different quality of opponents.
Yep.
There's that's for so many reasons. That's
okay.
ridiculous.
But a lot of talk about the quarterback room. But let's we'll hit the offense, defense, special teams in a second. But let's quickly take a look at the attendance today, just from a 30,000-foot view. Marte Mapu, offensive tackle Tyrone Wheatley Jr., and tight end Jaheim Bell all did not practice today. Weren't out there for stretch. I believe Bell and Mapu made their way to the field later on to kind of observe, but they did not participate. Jabril Peppers and David Andrews both come back after missing practice on Tuesday. Andrews missed both days. Peppers missing one. He left Tuesday with what looked like an injury. So I think he came out to practice. He was there, and then he left and was back and forth, but he didn't actually end up participating.
Yeah, no.
And then Marcus Jones leaves practice as well. Walks off with a trainer, and Sean Wade is still out there in a non-contact jersey. So,
and he actually left with an injury as well later in practice after actually having a really competitive session. He stood out a few times.
Yeah, so that defensive backfield is they're hurting a little bit. I mean, obviously Mapu hasn't basically played all summer, and then Jones, Peppers, and Sean Wade all leaving with injuries over the last couple of days. We'll talk about that more in the defensive period, but overall, what do you make? Andrews comes back, which I thought was huge. I'll kind of let you. I'll give it to you for what we heard from Andrews after practice.
Yeah, so David Andrews clarified why he actually hadn't been at the last couple of practices. Apparently, his youngest son has actually been at the hospital, Hasbro Children's Hospital in Providence. Andrews made sure to show love to their staff for everything they've done. He was saying he's waiting on word from his wife. So hopefully that situation obviously improves. We also heard from David Andrews about Christian Barmore's situation, actually. A lot of parallels have been drawn between Barmore and Andrews, obviously, because the center had to deal with blood clots in 2019 and ended up missing the entire season. He did point out that these are different situations, and you never really know, what someone's situation is, but that he was looking forward to speaking to Christian and checking in on him. But Andrews, in terms of his on-the-field stuff, he participated early on in warm-ups and a little bit of early work, but when it came to team period, Nick Leverett continued to be the starting center. Maybe, the team just giving David Andrews a little bit of a veteran's mental day off, considering everything he's going through. But it was good to at least see him back out there on the field.
Yeah, let's transition from that then into the offense, which I thought overall was a better day. Down in the red zone, sometimes it's tough to succeed down there when the field shortens like that. But I thought they did well. There was a couple obviously solid throws from Drake Maye down in the red zone. Jacoby Brissett as well hits Antonio Gibson on a nice angle route for a touchdown. So some improvements there overall. But you mentioned Nick Leverett and David Andrews. So let's talk about the offensive line, because after four consecutive practices with consistency in really the front four minus Andrews because he was out with at tackle and guard, they make a little bit of a switch today, and Vidarian Lowe plays left tackle, and Kaden Wallace bumps down to that second team. So today it was Lowe, Lowe, so is that right?
Lowe,
so Leverett.
yeah.
Mike Onwenu and Chuks Okorafor.
Yes,
So a little bit of a switch up. Obviously, we mentioned it. We were talking about it early on, but giving Drake Maye a little bit more, frankly, of a better offensive line on the second team. But what did you make of the switch? How did you think Vidarian Lowe worked? And did you think Drake Maye, lucked out and played better with Kaden Wallace on his left side?
So one, I want to acknowledge that this seems more like a competition thing than a Kaden Wallace wasn't necessarily cutting it thing. One, with Scott Peters' system, a major part of it is that you have to make mistakes so you know how to improve. So the fact that Vidarian Lowe was the left tackle, one, Vidarian Lowe has mostly been a right tackle with the second team, which I didn't love. I've mentioned a couple times. I think he is significantly better on the left side. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the tape, he's clearly more comfortable on that blind side. And he actually was solid today. Again, I always say when there aren't pads, there's only so much you can glean from offensive line play because you're really not making much contact. But still, there are times where Vidarian Lowe will lose pretty quickly and cleanly early on in reps. Didn't see that today, so that was solid from him. Kaden Wallace, I didn't notice him for any bad reasons with that second offensive line. And then Calvin Anderson, who'd actually been the top left tackle on the second team, was on the right side. Another reason I think this is more about competition than Kaden Wallace not playing well, because if it was a matter of quality, Calvin Anderson's looked very good on the left side for the second offense. So you'd think he would be elevated to that starting spot if it was just Wallace isn't good enough. We need a veteran who we know we can rely on. And Vidarian Lowe, like I mentioned, was out of place on the right. So this really just feels like another one of those wacky days on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Kind of throwing it off is the fact that Chuks Okorafor remains solid at that right tackle spot. He isn't moving. I think it's partially because the offense knows if you keep him where he's been a solid starter throughout his career, at least that's not going to be a liability. So, again, I'm kind of going back and forth. It's a strange situation, but I wouldn't say necessarily that Kaden Wallace is being punished or anything like that. Right. It's just another one of those days where they're seeing what sticks on the left side.
Well, that's why I think it is a strange situation because Kaden Wallace has been good. That offense, that first 5 offensive line has been good over the first 4 days. So I don't really know why they're trying to tweak with it and mess around with it. And I understand, moving guys around. I get that it's only August 1st, and you want to see what you have in a guy like Vidarian Lowe. In that first, when he plays on the first team, he is also going against first team defenders. So you kind of get the test and see, what he can really withstand. So I guess you kind of, especially in a day that's not in pads, you can kind of screw around with it a little bit more. And we talked about those first couple days in without pads, where it's more of a fundamental thing and trying to figure out, where they're putting their hands and how that's so important in this Scott Peters system. So another day, no pads, and they go with Lowe instead of Wallace, which, again, I'm with you. I don't think that's an indictment on Wallace whatsoever because he has been so solid and was so good throughout those first couple days. Just kind of weird to me because, again, we talk about having 5 guys that, look, and this is Barth talks about it, where what Dante Scarnecchia would always say, 5 guys looking through one set of eyes and knowing exactly where they're going, exactly what they want to do on every single play. And to kind of mess with that, kind of, raise my eyebrows anyway. So again, we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see where they go. Get back in the pads tomorrow. See if it's Wallace back out there, who I think has earned the right to be that left tackle. Yeah. And I think too that next Thursday is going to be ultimately the first test where that really goes. Drake Maye said that they hope to have it towards the 3rd preseason game. Their first 5 offensive linemen.
It's a long time.
It is a long time, but again, they're messing with it. They're kind of tweaking things around and seeing what they have. So I can't necessarily find myself hating on it yet, but again, raises the eyebrows a little bit why they would move Kaden Wallace off of there. So moving on from the offensive line, let's go to the wide receivers because I think I'm buying what Tyquan Thornton's selling. He had a good day today. He had another good day today. Again, prefacing it with it's only August 1st. We haven't hit the preseason. We haven't hit a joint practice. It was another non-padded practice for Tyquan Thornton, but he's really stringing together some really solid couple days. He beat Christian Gonzalez twice in the red zone today, a couple touchdowns. Has yet to get hurt, which is a huge thing for Tyquan Thornton. I think it's ultimately going to come down to next Thursday when they actually put the pads on against another opponent. But what are you seeing from 11, and are you buying it as much as I am, or am I being crazy for buying stock in Tyquan Thornton?
I'm not buying Tyquan Thornton stock until I see him in multiple regular season games prove he can be on the field.
I don't blame
and execute and win. But I will say he's taking advantage of his opportunities. That's all you can ask him to do. He's out there on the field. He isn't missing time. He hasn't appeared to get banged up. When the ball is thrown his way, he mostly catches it. He had one drop today. Really, it was a scramble drill. Should have been a sack. Jacoby Brissett got out of the pocket and tried to hit him in the front pylon of the end zone. Tyquan tried to make an extending grab. Couldn't bring that in, but he did before that beat Christian Gonzalez on 2 one-on-one reps pretty cleanly. Honestly, looking back at it, I thought Christian Gonzalez maybe could have been more competitive in coverage and tried to close the gap a little quicker, but it's really hard to know how he was playing it considering Tyquan is that speed guy. And then he also beat Alex Austin during a low red zone period for a touchdown on another impressive play. So, yeah, I would definitely have Tyquan Thornton as a guy whose stock is up, but just because, like everybody else, he's only wearing the uniform that his teammates are wearing. Yeah. So, again, not necessarily buying the stock, but the price is definitely going up.
All right, I like it. The other two young, yeah, not bad. Good analogy here from Taylor Kyles. I see we have some comments in the chat saying that they can't hear anything from Brian and Jackson over there, but I think we're fine. They're good people over there. Anyway, let's go to the other wide receivers, the other young guns, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk. Baker, I know you mentioned earlier, had a good day getting open in one-on-ones. Couldn't really bring that to success to 11 on 11s. And then Jalen Polk kind of has a down day today. What did you see from jersey number 1 and jersey number 6? And I don't want to say you're worried about them because it's one down day, but I feel like Polk finally is kind of took a little bit of a dip where he's basically been Mr. Consistent throughout the first 6 days.
I think for me, it's just that they were quiet during team drills. Like Javon Baker and Jalen Polk were both getting open during one-on-one. Javon Baker is consistently open in one-on-ones, just more than anybody else. I feel like Polk gets just enough separation where he can make a play without always having to be disrupted, whereas Javon Baker is getting like a foot on defenders consistently. The accuracy from the quarterback's just been kind of funky. But then in team drills, Jalen Polk, I will give him credit. He continues to be someone who mixes in with the first team and the second team. They just haven't really done a whole lot. With Javon Baker, he had an opportunity to make a 50-50 ball kind of catch. It was really more contested than 50-50, but wasn't able to do that. That actually happened twice in the last practice, so I'd like to see him bounce back, making more of the tough grabs that we've seen him capable of making. And then just Jalen Polk again, it was quiet. There's a lot of people that they're throwing to. It's not necessarily that I saw him not capitalize on any opportunities. He and Javon Baker both had drops in the past 2 practices. I didn't see either of them drop a pass today. But yeah, you'd like to see more from those young guys, considering, again, if this offense really wants to exceed expectations, it's probably going to be on the backs of those two young receivers. But tomorrow in pads, we'll see if they can make some more things happen.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out too to Hunter Henry. Big red zone day. He's always good in the red zone, especially during one-on-ones. He kind of shined. He shined today. That's his kind of bread and butter. He's been their leader in touchdowns for the last couple seasons. So I feel like him and Jalen Polk, who we saw yesterday or Tuesday, become sort of a red zone threat. I think number 1 and number 85 there are going to be able to work off each other a lot and do a lot in the red zone for the Patriots this season.
Also, Kayshon Boutte had a really nice grab in the back of the end zone. Looked like a one-handed grab. He's made a play. He's not getting a ton of quality reps because there's a lot of guys ahead of him, and Rager and Thornton have been consistent enough to push him kind of towards the back of that X receiver depth chart, especially Javon Baker as well. But to his credit, every single day he does something. There's some, tight window throw that he ends up making in a difficult window. So, again, you want to see more from Boutte, but with the opportunities he's gotten, he's pretty much capitalized. So I'm not sure if he's going to make the roster. It's still an uphill battle there, but he's making a case for himself.
Outside of Juju Smith-Schuster, I think Thornton, Rager, and Boutte have all done enough for themselves to make a realistic case to be sort of one of that last wide receivers on the roster. So it's going to be tight when it comes down to it over these last couple weeks. All right, we're going to get to the defense. We're going to get to special teams. We're going to wrap this thing up in just a second. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Game Time. We'll be right back.
Dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park. This baseball season, I'm using Game Time to land my Red Sox tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's super easy. You just open the app, click Sports, and the games will be right there for you. Right now, you can get tickets to the Rollin' Red Sox for as low as $11. You can even buy parking for the game and check out your seat view right in the app. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, and more. Get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, that's Game Time. Like we just said, head over to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off that first purchase. Before we get to defense, we were reminded by our friend Brian Hines, who was in the room with us, typing away on his Pat's Pulpit back end, that we did not mention number 3, Pop Douglas, whatsoever during our wide receiver portion. So we're going to bring in Brian Hines to the show to give us the lowdown on what he saw from number 3, still in that red non-contact jersey. But Brian, thanks for joining us. I'll hand you the mic for the entire lowdown on what you saw from the Patriots slot receiver today.
I thought he was the best receiver on the field today. No, he was better than Tyquan Thornton, but he's still in the red non-contact jersey, but he's participating in team drills, and he was uncoverable out there today. No one, his worst, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but the guy who hurt him the most was his quarterbacks. He was open every play, but Jacoby missed him high. Jacoby threw a pass behind him in the end zone. Then there was a miscommunication with Drake Maye. And then he finally caught one from Drake Maye, and it was like a little high, but he still went up full extension, snagged it, and it was a big gain. So, I mean, he was their best receiver in the spring. I thought he's only participated in team drills through 2 days here, but he's been awesome. He looks like Pop. You just can't touch him on defense. He's unguardable. He's been awesome. And I thought Drake Maye looks a little more comfortable out there with them. Like, he knows the Josh Downs. We've heard that comparison a lot. So Pop Douglas, very good today, and good connection with Drake Maye.
Yeah, I'd agree. We just haven't seen
Thanks,
a lot.
Brian.
Thank you, Brian. But no, Brian nailed it. I mean, we just haven't seen Demario Douglas get significant snaps for so long. You kind of forget, but today was the most active he's been in the entirety of training camp. Now, obviously, he's in the red non-contact, so having the shells on probably had a lot to do with that. But he was unguardable on slants, like was getting open every single time, and quarterbacks weren't hitting him. And then, there was a weird play where Drake Maye threw it way wide on a quick out, and he took responsibility. It looked like a miscommunication, but maybe Drake just threw wide of him. But yeah, Demario Douglas, it was really cool to see him out there. Actually got a grouping that I have been waiting for since these guys got drafted. We had Drake Maye, we had Polk, we had Pop Douglas, and we had Javon Baker. My soul almost left my body. It turned into just a short throw to Jalen Polk. But yeah, I got so excited. That's what you want to see. That's by like mid-season. Best case scenario, very lofty because we're talking about like 3 rookies probably starting at some point. But those guys are the core of your offense. It feels like moving forward. So it's cool to see them in action.
That's why I keep saying it's a 2025 team. That's like the core of the offense. Start of next season into next training camp a year from now. That's the grouping you want to see out there making plays every single day throughout the summer.
Hondo P.
So that's the offense. Now moving on to the defense. I want to get to Devon Gottschall, what he told us. I want to get to the signing of Mike Purcell this afternoon as well. But first I want to talk about the young corners today that were tested because we mentioned that Marcus Jones and Shaun Wade both leave today. That really threw Alex Austin and Marcellus Dial into the mix with that sort of ones grouping. I thought Dial, number 27, the 6th-round pick out of South Carolina. I thought he looked good today for what he was kind of called upon there all of a sudden because Shaun Wade leaves, and then when Marcus Jones leaves, Jonathan Jones has to bump inside, and there's this all of a sudden. They're really testing the depth of this cornerback room, and I think after last season where we saw Jack Jones go out, we saw Marcus Jones go out, we see Christian Gonzalez go out, and all of a sudden they're relying on guys like Austin and Marco Wilson. It quickly turned into that house of cards that we kept talking about last season. But today, that depth was tested, and I thought they looked pretty good.
Yeah, Marcellus Dial got a lot more run than he's gotten in the past. Typically been really with the 3s, but he wasn't just with the 2s. He was actually with the top defense across from Christian Gonzalez. Again, Alex Austin was still healthy. They got some run together as well, but I thought it was significant that someone like Marcellus Dial, 7th-round pick, a lot of tools that are intriguing, but has a long way to go. It was cool to see him out there. I didn't notice him in a bad way, so that's pretty good. Alex Austin did lose and give up a touchdown to Tyquan Thornton in the low red zone.
Who didn't today? Tyquan was the best receiver.
Exactly. He was on fire. So, have I been looking at the wrong camera the entire time? My bad if I have. Anyway, so solid day from Marcellus Dial. Alex Austin, the only time I noticed him was on that Thornton touchdown. Hopefully that's a good thing because he wasn't giving up anything anywhere else. But yeah, it was also disappointing to see Shaun Wade and Marcus Jones go out because both guys were having very competitive practices. Shaun Wade's been competitive the past 2 days, and also Marcus Jones feels like every practice he either has a breakup or he's in the hip pocket and gives up a touchdown or a reception just because the guy makes a really good catch. So hopefully those guys can get back on the field as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I like the way you kind of teed up Dial there, where we only notice them because I feel like I'm always looking at the numbers across the board, like, oh, okay, Gonzo's here, Alex Austin's here, etc. And we see 27. It's like, oh, that's a different number out here. Is that Marcellus Dial? You turned to me.
Not back. No, right.
Yeah, right. So again, it was good to see all of a sudden he got thrown in. I see him communicating too, calling inside with the safeties and stuff. Like that's such a huge hurdle that I feel like guys have to get over is not only understanding the defense, but being able to communicate with the other guys they're out there with and know what to do and when. And I thought he looked awesome in that role too.
I mean, to that point, miscommunications were a bit of a problem with the defense, especially in the red zone, obviously. If you make one tiny mistake, Gonzo mentioned it, like if you have one step that's the wrong direction, you can end up giving up a play. Jonathan Jones seemed like he had a miscommunication with Brendan Schooler and Jalen Hawkins. And he mentioned after practice the communication wasn't good enough. Right. If you go back to last year's film, even Alex Austin, the moments where he appeared to struggle the most were on like crossing routes or with all the man match that the Patriots play, which basically is man coverage until somebody goes in a certain direction, then you pass them off to somebody else, usually to avoid pick plays. That was where Austin really struggled. Sometimes he looked like he was confused as to what his assignment was and who he was picking up. So it's not an easy thing to do. So again, as you mentioned, very cool that Marcellus Dial was able to get on track and be that vocal presence in the back end.
Well, and too, today was the first day we saw a lap from the defense. The offense was running laps, the last couple of days with false starts and miscommunications on substitutions and stuff. We saw that from the defense today, like you said. So they weren't on it. They end up running their lap and get themselves together a little bit. But it's not only an offensive thing here in New England where the team screws up a little bit. So let's move on from the corners to the defensive line where Devon Gottschall. We talked to him after practice following him signing that 2-year extension yesterday. The Patriots also just signed Mike Purcell a guy who has been here in the building in the past as a practice squad player. This comes on the heels of obviously the Christian Barmore blood clot situation and Gottschall being here. I know that we talked about on our defensive stand-up, which you can watch on Patriots Press Pass from outside before we came inside to the nice air conditioning here, just how the Barmore injury and the Gottschall signing, if they were kind of conjoined or not. They obviously play different positions, but you still want kind of meat in the middle of the defensive line like that. And so what did you make of what Gottschall had to say? What did you make of him being back here? And we can talk about Judon a little bit as well, because let's cover Gottschall first so we can move on to Judon.
Yeah, so Devon Gottschall, it was kind of funny. He got his extension, he got his deal, but when asked after practice if he was happy, he alluded to his wife telling him, you can't always get what you want, but you always have to be grateful for what you have. He did get less money than what Grover Stewart had on his contract extension, so I think that's what Devon Gottschall's goal was. Didn't quite get there, but at the same time, even Grover Stewart gets a little more pass rush than Gottschall does, who's, no offense, he's pretty much a non-factor in passing situations, so made sense for the team. Continues a trend where they've been getting a lot of good deals for the players that they've extended and re-signed. I know some people think Devon Gottschall is overpaid. I disagree, considering with this 3-4 defense for the Patriots in the scheme, where there's a lot of two-gapping. You look at Grover Stewart and Dalvin Tomlinson, two guys he compared himself to. They play in schemes where there's a lot more penetration. You can make more plays behind the line of scrimmage and create disruption, whereas those two-gappers, you don't find them all over the league because a lot of defensive schemes prioritize that one-gapping type of style. So I think what he got paid was pretty fair. Good to have him back out. Not back out there. He's already been out there. Right. But nice to see that he got the situation, not that he wanted, but something that at least, made him and the team happy enough that there's no more drama.
Yeah, they mend the fence there, obviously, with Devon Gottschall, as it was reported yesterday. 2-year extension worth, I think, up to $21 million, 16.5 fully guaranteed. Someone who hasn't got his extension yet that he so desperately wants is Matthew Judon. But Matthew Judon was back on the field today. Doesn't come in the main entrance, doesn't do his signing the autographs and playing catch with fans and stuff. But he does show up to practice, comes in the back end of the practice field, and with his helmet, with a jersey, walking around a little bit, and then ends up participating and being a full participant. So whether he liked it or not, Judon was here after missing the last couple days in pads. Do you think it means they're any closer? Do you think it was just, hey, because Drake Maye mentioned before practice too, that they had a conversation, a good conversation, and that they're going to move forward. So do you think we're any closer to a deal? Is it more or less promising that he was actually out there today? And do you have any confidence that they end up getting a deal done?
So it's tough because they weren't in pads today. So Matthew Judon, the fact that he sat out in pads, a lot of the time with these hold-ins or holdouts, whatever, what have you, the players won't participate in padded practices because that's where your highest risk of injury is. So if this were padded, I think we'd have better perspective. But either way, I think it was a huge development that Judon was even here. If you've watched our previous shows, I've mentioned that I thought this was headed towards a very ugly place. Not only do you have the whole incident where Judon is asked to leave, comes back in sandals and a t-shirt, then is asked to leave.
Hands up in the air.
Right, and then is asked to leave by two different top members of the Patriots brass, and then isn't even in the building the next day. That seemed like something that was beginning to snowball and could potentially turn ugly. But Drake Maye mentioned before practice that they have a good relationship, and he wants to keep things internal. But he said, that Judon's going to be out here. He's going to be participating. And that was the case. Judon really seemed like he was just trying to, fall into the background a little bit, not draw attention to himself. He did lead the defense during conditioning drills. I thought that was a cool 180 from his last appearance. So if they really did squash this, that would be fantastic. I feel like there's some level of good faith on both sides. I would say the optimism that something's going to get done is obviously higher. The fact that Judon was here, and we know that he is unhappy after responding to the Diana Rossini report yesterday, that the team offered him a contract and saying, no, they didn't. Don't make me out to be the bad guy again. So, it's impossible, I think, to know whether or not they really made progress, but it at least seems like they have mended a bridge I wasn't sure could be mended. So again, unknown how this is going to turn out and how effectively this regime handled the situation. But at least like with Gottschall, he holds in, then pretty quickly goes back to participating. Judon, all of this happens, but he still returns to the building and, goes back to just being good teammate, the guy that he kind of sold himself as when he spoke to the media. So positive signs, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think even after that incident, the Judon saga of Monday, where he's looking around and throwing his hands up in the air and sitting on the pads and talking to Mayo and stuff like that, not that you would think, but I like the fact that his teammates have still come out and stood by him. Yeah. Ramondre Stevenson on K. Adams saying, we will have Judon, we want him out here. And Gottschall saying today, we just want to see him get paid. We want the best for him. Like, I feel like everybody understands what's going on. And even though he did kind of, have that episode, if you will, on Monday,
that's fair.
They've sort of, I think that's the nicest way to put it, is this is an episode. But, again, just it's a business at the end of the day. And sometimes you have to do things like that. Sometimes you have to hold out in ways that you might not want to, and that felt like the last straw for him. Again, obviously yesterday he's tweeting out that they're trying to make him look bad and things like that, so we'll see what happens from here. I wonder when that conversation really was, because that tweet was at like 1 in the afternoon, and then they had a conversation at some point between then and now. Who knows? But again, out there at practice, so a positive sign, a positive turn for the Patriots edge rusher Matthew Judon, still in the midst of this contract squabble. Quickly before we preview tomorrow's day 8 practice on Friday, special teams. We had a couple special teams periods today. We saw some kickoffs. I think it was our first time we saw like the new kickoff rule sort of being fully ran with, a full kick return team and a full kickoff team. Not much to take away from it, but I think it's worth noting that they actually practice it, because 1 week from today is their first preseason game. And then in a kickoff period towards the end of practice, Chad Ryland goes 4 for 4, and Joey Sly goes 3 for 4. So what do you see? What did you see from the kickers? Do you think Ryland truly has the leg up in the competition, or can Joey Sly take it over eventually?
I think you have to say that Chad Ryland has the leg up now. Pun intended, for sure.
Yeah.
That is Brian Hines applauding in the background, if you could hear it. But yeah, there has not been a day that Joey Sly has outperformed Chad Ryland. In the past 2 practices, Chad Ryland has outperformed Joey Sly.
Yep.
This is what we've been wanting to see. I felt terrible about it. I think we all felt terrible about it, kind of, digging Chad's grave all the way back in the spring and then early on this summer. But credit to him. I'd say he was one of the winners of camp, because now he's stacked positive days, which is what you want to see from him. He's got the new, he's got Tom Quinn on board. Yep. Tom Quinn has worked with a bunch of really great specialists, so you're hoping that would help. Ryland reworked his kicking form. Ask Brian more about that if you'd like to. But yeah, I really do think that was a huge win for him, and he needed this positivity. So great to see for the second-year kicker.
Yeah, you talk in different sports, like goalies in hockey are psychos, and they can just like kind of get through the mental game and turn their brains off. And even if they have a shitty day in net, they come out and they'll have 30 saves the next day. I feel like Ryland's done a good job of that, where every time we talk to him, he's even keel and he hasn't changed. And I feel like he's kind of a psycho in a good way, where he can turn his brain off and be like, look, I'm just going to rebound and be a better kicker. And you hope that's the case, because that's what you need. Guys like Adam Vinatieri, Steven Gostkowski, the best in the business, can turn their brains off, kick it, and go kick a game-winning field goal. So hopefully we get that rebound from Chad Ryland after, again, a struggle of a season last year, and then not a great spring. He's looked good so far this summer. All right, Taylor, that's probably going to do it for the Day 7 recap. But Day 8, we go into tomorrow. Likely in pads, I think, again. They mentioned today that they had a couple, they needed like a day off, I think, from the pads, so now they'll probably get back into it on Friday. So what are you looking for heading into Friday's practice, again, in full pads down here in Foxborough?
Questions are always on the offense. I want to see if Jacoby Brissett can bounce back after 2 not-so-great practices. I want to see if Drake Maye can get back in pads and maybe take a step forward.
Keep
from
building from number 10. That's
it doesn't need to be perfect, but I just want to see progress, because he seems sped up. We haven't seen him throwing downfield since the pads came on. Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, I'd like to see them show up with some level of consistency whenever they get their opportunities. On the offensive line, obviously, is going to be a big one to watch, whether or not Vidarian Lowe remains at left tackle. Maybe they're doing, everybody gets 3 or 4 days. We could see something like that. So those will be the big places that I'll be looking at. All the premium positions on offense.
For sure. Watch for Kaden Wallace. I want him back at left tackle so bad now that the pads are coming back on. And Drake Maye. I'm looking for the Drake Maye practice. It's sort of become my tagline over the last couple of days. But eventually he's going to come out here and kick ass and shine and dice up a defense. Whether it's in joint practices coming next week, whether it's tomorrow before the weekend, who knows? But every day I'm sort of waiting to see Drake Maye show those true colors, those true Carolina blue colors out here in Foxborough with the red, white, and blue. So that's going to do it here from Gillette Stadium. He's Taylor Kyles. I'm Mike Kadlick. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in here on Patriots Press Pass. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow for another training camp recap after practice. So make sure you keep it here with us on CLNS and CLNSmedia.com. Until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time. See ya.